So it was 6 years old whenever I went on this daycare field trip, and all I can really remember is the gym that I went to. It was split into two sections. So the front of the gym was like the rec, and then the back gym where all the team girls were working out. And I remember being on a trampoline, kind of like peeking through, because there was a wall that divided it, but it was really just the bathrooms. And so I remember like peeking back, and I would see these girls on the tramps and on the beams and all of that, tumbling and flipping. And I was like, I think I can do that. So then I started copying them. And then a coach came over and was like, have you ever done it? And then they just sent a letter home. And it's kind of a blur because I didn't think in that moment my life would have changed and I would be who I am today. So it's like you don't really remember it too much. I started setting goals in gymnastics, thinking what did I want to do with the sport. As I progressed and got older, I started setting more goals. And whenever I was around 14 years old, I made a lot of sacrifices. I decided to give up public school, go to homeschool. I gave up all the school dances. I've never been to a prom, never done a lot of those things that maybe most of your kids are doing or want to do. But I fell in love with the sport, so I guess that's what I got out of it. I got to go to world championships. I got to go to the Olympics. I got to live out a lot of dreams that most kids dream of since they were little kids in Mommy and Me classes, so I'm very grateful for that. But it also made me set goals at a very young age, which I can't be more proud. So whenever I started really progressing in gymnastics and getting good, she would call me into the office, and at the beginning of every year, we would set down, I would write down my goals, short-term and long-term, and then it just kind of started being a thing so that you have a visual, so that you're not just chasing after one big thing and you never know if you're gonna get there, because there are always little steps that you have to get before you reach the bigger goal, and sometimes it's easier to see it if you write it down on paper. I think most of the time, whenever we fall on our face or whatnot, it's so embarrassing for ourselves, so we try not to think back to those moments, but then you can go back and you're like, that's the exact moment that I wanted to change what I was doing so I could be more successful, or you thought, I'm never gonna let that happen again. So you almost use it as like ammo to be better and to not let that happen, because it is very stressful and embarrassing and it's just not fun and it hurts. So we try not to do that, but those moments always make us stronger and build us into the person that we want to become. I feel like we have our ups and downs as every athlete does, and every athlete has almost a breaking point where you're just like, is it even worth it? But I feel like even in those moments, you have people that surround you that don't let you give up, because it's not easy doing a sport for so many years and then just giving up on a bad day. So I think if you give up on a bad day, it just kind of shows who you are. So we always want to push through those bad moments. But there are moments when you don't know if you can succeed like you want to, or your goals are out of reach and your dreams. And it's saddening, but then you have the support system around you to remind you that you can do it. It was at a classics, and I was kind of all over the place. I'd fallen on bars, and then I'd fallen on floor, got pulled from vault. Um, and then one of those years, I also didn't make national teams, so that was a huge like letdown for myself. But then I remember I was like bawling that night, and then my parents tried to talk to me, and it like wasn't working, and I was like, it was just really hard. And then my brother called me. He's like, you know what, there's always next year, like don't give up. Because I think in that moment, in that time, I didn't really want to go on with it because I had failed. At least I thought I had at that young of an age. If you watch any of my floor routines, it's usually my second skill. It's called the Biles. You guys won't clearly understand this because it's gymnastics terms, but what I'll go on to do, I'll do a double layout, which is I'll do 2 flips with a straight body, and at the very end of it, I do a half turn. So if you watch my floor routine, that's the second skill that I do. We made it up out of almost an injury. I partially tore my calf muscle one time attempting an extra half twist than my skill is. And then my coach was like, well, maybe if you do a half twist, nobody's ever done that before, and it will take the stress off that landing of your calf muscle. So let's just play around in the gym with this. He's like, and nobody's ever done it. So then we started playing around with that, and then there's a whole process to doing the skill and all of that and getting it named after you. You have to be the first, or even if two people try it, then they kind of just base it off of who did it better, who has a higher score and all of that, because that's happened before if you're both at the same world championships doing the same skill. So there's a lot made up about it, but mine was kind of like from an injury standpoint and taking the pressure off of it. I feel like leading up to the Olympics, whenever we got in the village and we got all settled, all the practices, they kind of go as a blur, and then you're there at podium training, and then at qualifications and all of that's like a blur. But all around finals and team finals, I remember exactly, and it's just like, even afterwards, standing up on that podium, hearing it, it's just like, it just replays in your head and you don't even know what to think. It doesn't feel real. I feel like none of us are competitive towards each other because we realize we're stronger as a team rather than individually. So it's kind of hard to compete against everybody else, and I think we all get that when we're on the floor. We're competing against ourselves because that's the healthiest competition. We're all good friends, so we all understand and we're rooting for each other as well as yourself. So we all understand. Because it's a hard sport and it's dangerous, so we want the best for each other. As we do, we hope we go out and we do what we are trained to do. It feels kind of crazy how fast a year went by, because the year of the Olympics, it even goes by, but then afterwards you kind of feel like you're doing everything at once, and then you look back and you're like, it's been a year, like, did I enjoy my time off? Which I did. I enjoyed it so much. It just went by faster than you think, because you think a year, oh, that's a long time. It went by so fast, but I'm excited to get back into training and get back into the working mode, just because I've been doing so many things that are different and like out of my comfort zone that you sometimes are ready to get back into it. It's usually consists of 2 training sessions, usually both 3 or 4 hours. So depending, I don't know what it's going to be like in the beginning, just because I've never taken a break in my life off gymnastics, and I've taken a year. So I'm pretty sure I'll start out with 1 session a day, maybe 2, we don't know yet. But usually it would consist of getting up at like 8, being at the gym at 9, and then I would go 9 to 12, have a 3-hour break, and I would usually do school or do therapy, and then go back to the gym from either 3 to 6 or 3 to 7, and then go home, eat, bedtime, and then repeat. I feel like it would either have to be that or confidence, because everyone around you can tell you, oh, you can do this, but then whenever you really start to believe in yourself, that's when it comes to life. But you also have to be a little bit fearless, and because at a very young age, I chose what I wanted to do, and not knowing the outcome, thankfully it happened the way I wanted it to, but some people aren't as fortunate, or an injury stops them, or whatever it is. So it's kind of like you have to be fearless of knowing not what the future is or what it holds for you. At the age of 5, starting in my childhood, I was adopted by my grandparents, who are now my parents. I was in foster care from 3 to 5 years old, in and out of it, so I've had a couple of struggles then. The first time I was 3 years old, and then we went to live with them, and then we went back to foster care, and then at 5 years old, that's when like the official adoption and everything went through, and then I went to live with them in Texas. I mean, I remember a little bit being in foster care, but not anything that like traumatized me, because we were very lucky and thankful for our situation that we had. Even though we were in foster care, we had a very nice and loving foster family, and we got to stay in one place, really. So we were very blessed. I thought I was a normal 6-year-old, but everyone just saw the strength and they saw the muscle and they saw the definition on my body, and that's what like intrigued them. I was active like around the house and on the playground, but nothing too serious where my parents were like, let's enroll her in a gym. They just thought I was like every other child, flipping on the bed, flipping on the couch, doing all that stuff. Just a very brave child. I think so, energy-wise, just because it's a way to kill my energy, and I've learned to focus in a little bit more on what I'm doing. So it's helped, but it's also helped me speak to kids out on it, that it's not something you should be afraid of telling people or think you're different. I feel like it's like if anyone has asthma, they don't think of it too much as a disability. It's just something you were born with and that you have to accept, and you don't think of yourself as an outcast. Because there are other kids and teens and adults struggling with the same thing, and if they can do it, you see that you can do it as well. If you feed into anything that makes you energized, or like if you're an athlete and whatever fuels you to bring you more energy, then that's what you use, and other people just already have it, I feel like. I don't have the focus that they have, so then that could be you, like I could see that as a downfall, which I don't. I just have to focus a little bit more. I started taking medicine. I was diagnosed at a very young age, went to the doctor, they prescribed me something, so I've tried doing that, and now that's what I do to make it easier to focus. I feel like I just know when I need to kill it, and I've been trained and we're very disciplined as athletes, and at the high level that we do it, there are a lot of risks we take. So I just kind of know that I have an off switch and when to hit it and when to turn it back on. I feel like in my immediate circle, it's definitely friends, family, coaches, doctors, anyone really who has belief in you and that you can turn to and talk to, and at the end of the day, they'll always be on your side and willing to help in any way possible. And then like outside, I mean, I was homeschooled, I don't have a lot of friends, or you don't know a lot of people, but then it would be other family members that are always checking up on you. Most of the time in gymnastics, if you ask, can I go do this or do that? Obviously the answer is already no, because the fear of you getting hurt or all of that. So I feel like the year of yeses is kind of weird, because you're like, I can do that? Like nobody's worried about me getting hurt. So I've gotten to go on family vacations, which I couldn't do a lot of leading up to the Olympics in those last couple of years. And I got to go like indoor skydiving, and then I do a lot of speaking engagements. And even when you're younger, you're like, oh, I want to be on TV, I want to be on commercials, and now I do all of that stuff. So you kind of get a taste, a little bit of everything, and now you're just like ready to go back into your shell. It was just kind of like to live life and to just have fun with whatever opportunities had arose, rather than like set down things, because I mean, I knew at the end of the year I wanted to start training again, so I guess that could have been the biggest goal on the paper, but I didn't write anything down because I've been doing it for so long, and usually they were about gymnastics, and since I wasn't doing gymnastics, I just kind of wanted to have fun. I feel like I kind of tried to do that during the year off, but then you try not to think what comes after gymnastics, because I know ahead of time I'm going to be joining again for 3 years, so then you can't think too far and you have to kind of live in the moment. I feel like maybe if this interview was after a second Olympics, I could tell you, but right now, since it's going back into the grind and going back into gymnastics, you don't really know yet, because the opportunities will hopefully be endless, and the deciding factors, so we'll see. It's keeping everything on the table and like me still living my life, but it's very balanced and it's very organized. because my body, it can do a lot of crazy things, and it's kind of like sporadic, but it's very controlled as well. So it's like whenever I go to the gym, I do what I have to do, and then whenever I'm at home, I try to be a normal kid as possible. So I think that's where the balance comes in. With my new coach that I have, I've worked alongside him because his athlete was also on the 2016 team, and we've been training for 4 or 5 years together. So he was always at the camps that we went to every single month. So it's not like he's a stranger to me. I know him. I feel like there will be differences. I just don't know what they'll be yet. I think it's just different from having a coach your whole entire life and then switching, because I think the relationship is different because it's not like they've grown up with you. Now I'm an adult, so it'll be different, but I can't tell you exactly what that is because I haven't worked with him yet. I feel like since I already went through that whole entire process at 16 years old, whenever my body was changing and all of that stuff happened, I wasn't peaking yet. And then after all of that happened, then I peaked. And I feel like in this day in our sport, we're realizing that we've been peaking at an older age, so it's been working. I wasn't even born when the 10-point system was happening, so I can't say too much about it. I was born in 1997, and I think they changed it a little bit after. So I wasn't even a gymnast yet. So all I grew up with was not the 10-point system. But they kind of included it still in. We can get a 10 on execution, which has not ever happened yet. But you have the option, or at least goes to a 10.0 in execution. But otherwise, I feel like they felt that you could furthermore yourself as a gymnast and your capabilities, and you could choose your own start values, and that you could put your own flair and your own personality into your gymnastics, rather than just setting it as a 10 and you can't really do too much more or go over a 10. So say my sister was doing gymnastics and she can't do the same skills I can do on whatever event that it is. Maybe on bars she can have a higher start value because she can do more on bars, and say I'm like not good at bars. I do what I'm capable of, and then I see my start value, say it's a 15, say she starts at a 16. Then there are those differences. And then on vault, say if I'm better than her, I can start at a higher start value. So you really do gymnastics to your own capability rather than everybody doing it to the same level and getting scored the same. So that's when you can push your body and your mind in the limits. I think so, because to do the sport, it does come with fear, but then you also have to be fearless. You have to be brave and trust in yourself. So I think once you start to trust in yourself, you become stronger as an athlete. I'm afraid of letting people down, failure, being injured, or having an injury so bad and the doctor telling me I won't continue with my sport. But I think that's every athlete if you ask them. You don't think of the fear, because if you think of the fear, you start changing things, and then that's when you can get injured, or all of those things that you don't want to happen that you're thinking of could happen. I think that part is very private, and it's something that I don't really share too much. But I also think it was just like going to him, and then the main question he asked was, "You're usually having fun when you compete, right?" And he's like, "Were you having fun that day?" And I was like, "No, I was too focused on what everybody else was thinking and saying, and I wanted to please everyone." He's like, "Did you do that before?" And I said, "No." He said, "Then why did you do that then?" And I think that's kind of what clicked, and then I realized what I do for myself is what I have fun, I go out there and I don't let anybody else change how I do things, and I think that's what really clicked. I feel like going into the Olympic Games, you only have one goal in mind, and you're not really tied into the media or what they're doing because you're so focused in on yourself. I feel like if you're at the Olympic Games focusing on what the media is going to say about you, you're not really doing your job, or you're probably not as stressed as you should be. So we go in knowing that we have one goal in mind, and then we're kind of set on that. So we're not even focused on social media or what's happening, or you don't even see it because you're not on it. And like you're not really watching TV or all of that. We saw the first cut of steel. We got to put our names in it that will go in some place of the ship. But it's basically you have this aircraft carrier. You get to do the cruising of the ship, so we'll break the bottle. Not very soon. It's in a couple of years. We still have a while. I think going to the Olympics, it brings a whole nother level of patriotism. So I think we have a lot of pride in representing our country. And even the soldiers that go out and represent everyone calls us their heroes and all of that, but I think they're the real heroes. So I think we have a different kind of respect when we go and compete for our country, just because we're selected from a wide variety of a group of athletes, and then they narrow it down. So I was one of 5 that were selected on the team out of hundreds and hundreds of gymnasts in the United States.
Do we have another question from anyone? All right. Simone, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.